Warnings from OpenAI Sam Altman and MIT paper puncture Wall Street's enthusiasm. US tech stocks sold off on Tuesday as warnings that the hype surrounding artificial intelligence could be overdone hit some of the year's best performing shares. Good morning, everybody. If you've never seen the live show before, what we do is every single morning I come on and I give a daily update of what's going on in the world of artificial intelligence. Thankfully, there's a huge amount of stuff happening every single day, which makes it very easy to continue to do this show. We have clips and summaries which appear on the YouTube channel. You can find that at I Am Kyle Barmer over on YouTube. Just search it, it should pop up, as well as a daily email which goes out with a summary, a written summary, plus links to the videos to help you keep up to date with what's going on. So today, a couple of things going on. First thing is going to be the stock markets are a bit shaky when it comes to artificial intelligence stocks, and that means the markets as a whole are pretty shaky because right now they are the main stocks, and we have companies like Nvidia, which are the largest company on earth by market capitalization right now. There's some lack of confidence which we might be seeing have ramifications, maybe a correction in the market, so we'll go through that. We're also going to talk about one of the reasons why there is a lack of confidence. So Mark Zuckerberg has started to strip down his AI division a couple of weeks after giving $100 million signing bonuses. So what's going on there? And then I want to talk a bit about AI in medical research. We've got a couple of stories coming out. One about a woman who was able to get her voice back from, I think, 8 seconds of audio. AI was able to recreate her voice and now she can basically speak again. Bill Gates has launched a $1 million AI competition to tackle Alzheimer's, again, using artificial intelligence in research. And then finally, I want to talk about Mustafa Suleyman's essay that he's just put out, which I highly recommend everybody has a look at, which is about consciousness or seemingly conscious AI, SCAI. I think this is a term that's going to be discussed for the next couple of weeks at least, so it's well worth dropping into, reading, and also having a discussion about what that is. And I will also be taking questions from the audience. So as always, drop in your questions and I'll be able to answer them in between the various segments. And again, everything is going to be available on YouTube and in the newsletter. You can follow the links in the bio to get both of those. So first thing up, US tech stocks hit by concerns over future of AI boom. Okay, the fact that there is a boom, whenever we have a boom in the financial markets, we have a bust. There is always a bit of a correction. So when there is overconfidence, when there is greed, that tends to get followed pretty much always by a collapse when fear starts to come in. So the markets will swing between greed and fear, and we don't learn. We've been doing this since the beginning of stock markets. If you go and look at the tulip craze and stuff like that, humans are very good at doing this. So warnings from OpenAI Sam Altman and MIT paper puncture Wall Street's enthusiasm. US tech stocks sold off on Tuesday as warnings that the hype surrounding artificial intelligence could be overdone hit some of the year's best performing shares. So Nvidia is the world's first $4 trillion company. They fell 3.5%, and the software group, weird thing to call them, Palantir, dropped 9.4%. Palantir is incredibly overpriced in the stock market. Anyway, I'm not going to give any investment advice here. Do your own research, obviously. But there has been a drop in the various AI-backed shares and stocks on the market at the moment. So the Nasdaq Composite as a whole is down 1.4%, which is the largest one-day drop since August the 1st. Okay, that's not that impressive. Let's calm down. It's only August the 21st. So shouldn't be overblowing this too much. So there is some correction. There are a lot of people out there and you see them on websites, journalists like on the BBC and the Financial Times, where I'm reading this from. You can see them gleefully awaiting the crash of all of this. If you are a journalist, AI is a threat to your livelihood, a big threat, and already journalists have been squeezed for the last couple of decades really by the internet, so we have to take everything with a pinch of salt. I actually read let me see if I can find it because it was fascinating. LinkedIn, she's the BBC's head of technology. I've forgotten her name. Could be this. She was writing about AI. That is not her. I'm not going to be able to find her. She was writing about AI on her LinkedIn, and the tone was very dour. And she was talking about AI psychosis, which is a big issue that we need to talk about, obviously. But at the end of it all, of her kind of commentary. At the end, she said, "Oh, but I'm sure we'll see a correction in the market soon. We'll see a bust at the end of this boom," which kind of tells you where the lead chief editor for the BBC's tech department falls on this, which gives you an idea of how this is being covered in the media. That is not to say that there will not be a correction. So I get asked this a lot, and I actually saw a debate on Greg Eisenberg's Twitter the other day where he asked, let me pull this up because I can definitely find this one. Greg Eisenberg is, I guess he tweets about entrepreneurship and building businesses. And one of the things he asked, and there's some good, here we go. And there's some good discussion here. I'm curious, do you think we're in an AI bubble? Robert Scoble, who's one of the granddaddies of AI and tech in general, he said, "You're all spoiled and bored. Geesh. Google hasn't even shipped Genie 3 yet," which I think is very true. The fact that we have these magical tools and get so used to them and basically entitled to them immediately is telling. They're basically magic, but we still expect more and want more all of the time. And so my answer to this was investment bubble, yes. I think we're in an investment bubble. Technology bubble, no. And a lot of people are saying that they are disappointed by GPT-5 and GPT-5's disappointing rollout, which it was. They haven't done very well in their messaging, in their marketing, I think has caused a lot of people to be down on artificial intelligence over the last few weeks. But we need to zoom back a little bit and think in the slightly broader scale than just a week or a month. We need to think in the years here, and the stuff that's happening with AI is still amazing. I don't think we would, if AI stopped progressing right now, it would still take us as a species, humanity, a while to be able to leverage it fully. In the same way that when the internet first became a thing, it took a long time before we started to build on the internet. And I think AI is very similar. It's a general purpose technology upon which we can build. It's a platform. So we had the internet since the technology in the 90s, but it took us a long time to get to things like e-commerce, to social media, to messaging, to things like this, live streams, etc. These are all applications that were built on top of the general purpose technology that is the internet. And I think that generative AI is very similar in that there's still a lot for us to build and a lot for us to create based on the technology, and we've barely scratched the surface. So yes, we'll probably see a financial correction. There's a lot of dumb money being thrown into artificial intelligence just because a company uses AI, and money's being thrown at it because people are wanting to get the next OpenAI, they want to get the next Lovable or the next 11 Labs. They want to have their money in that so it can shoot up. That's the greed part. But that means that people are throwing money into things they don't necessarily understand, and those still need to be businesses that work. And if they are not, those businesses will collapse and money will be lost, and the market as a whole will lose confidence and it will collapse. I think the technology underlying, though, is still going to be there, and it's still going to be very important. So yeah, we'll probably see a correction. We'll probably see a bust in the market. I think that's healthy, in the same way that the dot-com crash allowed for the excesses, the pets.com of the world, to be stripped away, and then for us to be left with the Googles and the Amazons and the businesses that were focused on actually building a business off the back of the technology instead of the technology being the business, if that makes sense. I think we're going to see that in the next couple of years. But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of doomsaying about it's overhyped and it's trash technology. People are unable to divide the business of it and the technology, and we need to at a certain point. I'm going to hop over to some questions, and then we're going to talk about Zuckerberg and the fact that he started to fire people and scale down his AI division, which is very surprising after hiring people at $100 million. Yeah, high fruit, GPT, a general purpose technology. So GPT used to mean general purpose technology. So it's things like the semiconductor, for example, which you could use to make electronic components. It's things like circuit boards. It's things like computers, electricity. I guess the steam engine would be a GPT, a general purpose technology. And now generative AI. It's a technology where you can use that technology to build other technologies. So once humanity unlocks the GPT, the general purpose technology, it allows us to build upon it and to create more things. Unfortunately, the acronym is also GPT, but it's different to a generative pre-trained transformer, which is like ChatGPT. But the general purpose technology acronym's actually been around for longer, so it's confusing. We probably need a new one because ChatGPT has the brand cachet now. Yes, it is unfortunate that they happen to both be the same thing. Daniel's saying that 95% of companies are using AIs for things that JSON can do. Yeah, a lot of the uses of AI are pretty naive and basic at the moment. A lot of people are building wrappers. There's nothing wrong with wrappers per se. It's just we are scratching the surface of what we can do with these technologies. And right now, I think we're going to look back at this period in the same way that we look back to the early internet, and we're going to laugh at it. I'm going to pull up the Space Jam website, which is still alive, hilariously. It might play music. Let's see if I can find the Space Jam website. They actually moved it off spacejam.com. Here we go, I've got it. So the Space Jam website, oh, it doesn't have the animated background anymore. So this used to have an animated background. I think it used to autoplay music. It was an early version. This is what the internet used to look like a GeoCities site. And when we look at it now, it looks quaint. It looks horrendous. It's given me a headache just looking at it. And this is not even it in its full capacity, which was with blaring music and animations, etc., etc. This is a chill version. Oh, they even have the sitemap. Off the homepage, they have a sitemap.html, so you can see the sitemap. Oh, it's really sweet. So I think we're going to be looking back at artificial intelligence and what we've done with generative AI, and we're going to be thinking, oh, that's cute. Things like 11 Labs and Lovable, they're very quaint. They're a bit like the Space Jam websites of their time, and we thought we were so clever using AI in this way. I think we're going to have that in 10, 20 years or so, where we look back at this period and we think that we're adorable. It's like us using floppy disks, 1.4 megabyte floppy disks, etc., which now seems quaint and bizarre and dial-up internet. I think we're in that stage right now, and it's going to take years until we move forward into maturity and we're starting to use this technology fully. Someone said, yeah, okay, this user 699994, someone said that 95% of businesses are not seeing a return on their AI investment. Is that true? So it's not ROI, they are failed projects. So let me try and pull up is it 95% or 90%? It's a lot. MIT, here we go. The Gen AI Divide, the state of AI in business, surveyed 300 AI deployments. It's not many. Here we go. I'm going to pull up the Tom's Hardware. So these are pilots. And pilots don't work all the time. So what I'd really like to see is how many non-generative AI projects are going ahead. Because the really cool thing about Gen AI is you can use it to pilot and prototype a project really quickly. Like really quickly. I can hop onto a vibe coding tool, spin up a prototype of an idea that I have, and have it ready in an hour or so to show to customers, to show to stakeholders very quickly. That means that speed of being able to prototype and pilot means that it's also easier to dump those projects. And that is not a bad thing. You should not proceed with a project if it's not going to work. And that's why we do pilots. That's why we do prototypes. So we can play around with it, we can kick the tires, see if what we're building works, if anyone's going to want it. And if not, we kill it very quickly and then we move on to the next thing. Previously, building projects before generative AI, we had to have meetings, we had to have multiple teams, we used to have Scrum, have a workflow. It would take a long time to get a pilot off the ground. Now I can technically have a pilot off the ground by the end of today and then either proceed with it or discontinue it. So I think we also need to look into that when we talk about 95% of generative AI implementations having no measurable impact, is how many of them are just getting shuttered, basically, because it is much cheaper to shut them down. So I think that's one thing that we need to look into. The main issue that I'm seeing in the commentary on this particular MIT article is that this is also companies learning what to do with Gen AI. Because remember, Gen AI, as we know it, has only been around for a couple of years. We've had generative AI for longer, but it's come into the kind of public in the last couple of years. And these projects have started to come online within the last year or so. So I think we also need to take into account that this is a very new technology and there is going to be a higher rate of failure. So the fact that 5% of them are generating an ROI, pretty solid. We need to have a look at what those projects are. So Here we go. As per the report, studies finding purportedly demonstrates that only about 5% of AI pilot programs achieve rapid revenue acceleration. Okay, that's interesting. Are all of the projects for revenue, or are they for operations streamlining? Are they for cost reduction? So not necessarily all of them have to be revenue driving. If I'm starting a project, there's many ways I'd do that, but that's another point. It says that the vast majority stall and deliver little to no measurable impact on profit and loss. The findings are based on 150 interviews, a survey of 350 employees, and an analysis of 300 public deployments of AI. I think it's fine. We need more research. 300 deployments is not that many. That said, if only 5% are moving forward, then there might be a problem here, and we need to work out what that problem is. Is it because we're just trying more projects? We're just throwing more spaghetti at the wall and we're not expecting it to stick? Or is there something fundamental underlying that is not working? Are the companies using AI for the wrong thing? Is the AI not good enough? What is that problem there? But I don't think it's quite as dramatic as the headline puts forth. The headline sounds scary. It's 95% of implementations fail, have no measurable impact, but we need to dig into it a little bit more than that. How can I sell AI automations to mid-size and small businesses? Which industry is best to use? So this comes back to the question of 95% of implementation seem to be failing. So what is that 5% that is working? You have to start with any automation, with any kind of consultancy or advisory. You need to start with what is the business. You have to, don't go and chase an industry just because you think it's hot, just because that industry is making money. If you don't have a background in that industry, you're not going to be able to make any impact. So you're asking what industry is best for me. What's best for me is going to be very different to what is best for you, Alexander. You need to start in whatever your industry is. So if you've been working in manufacturing for the last 10 years and the problems that companies in manufacturing have, go and help them. Go and help them work out how to fix those problems. That is the core fundamental of business. It's got nothing to do with AI. That's just business. We need to find the problems and solve them. Just going into a company and saying, hey, I'm going to do AI, that's insufficient. And that's probably why a lot of these pilots are also failing, because you can't just throw AI at a problem and assume that it's going to get fixed. So first, within your particular niche, as somebody who has experience and contacts, etc., within a particular industry, you need to find out what those problems are that the industry have, and then which of those problems is AI suitable for assisting with. And it's not going to be all problems. Some of those problems can be solved with non-AI automations. Some of them can be solved with normal code. Some of them are human problems and they've got nothing to do with AI. So AI is not always going to be the solution to the problem, because it just isn't. It's just another tool. It's just another way to fix problems. So how do I sell automations to small and mid-sized businesses? First, you find that problem, you solve it for a few people, either for free or for low cost. You build up case studies, you build up a record of actually helping them, either to increase revenue or to decrease costs. And then you go to other companies, but you have to solve that problem first and foremost. And that requires identifying what it is. So start within your own industry. Monica's saying, can you take us through how you would prototype? Yeah. So for me, if I want to prototype an idea, and I do this far too often and it gets in the way of me doing my real work, but what I would do is I will start in Claude and I'll have a discussion with Claude. Claude just happens to be my kind of go-to AI for most things. So I'll talk about the fact that I want to build a prototype and have it talk me through what kind of the most basic form of value is that I can deliver in order to prove that this prototype is useful. So it's very tempting to start to add on loads of features, but if we're building a prototype, we just need to narrow down to the core value that we're delivering and strip everything else out, because if it can't deliver on that core value, then the rest of it is noise. It doesn't matter. So I use Claude to go back and forward for that. I then will say to Claude, okay, I'm going to build a prototype. I'm going to build it in Lovable. So I use Lovable for kind of vibe coding. I'm actually off to see them in a few days. I'm going to Stockholm to go and see Lovable. I will say to Claude, okay, I'm going to build in Lovable. Lovable uses these languages. I'm going to use a Superbase database, etc. I just give it the specs about Lovable. I think it knows it already, but I like to provide that information. Please write me a project brief that I can take over to Lovable, and Lovable will build out this prototype step by step, at each step allowing me to check it's working before we move on to the next one. So Claude writes me the project brief. I then take that project brief over to Lovable. Lovable has a free trial, by the way, so you can play around with it. I think you get 5 credits a day. If you use my referral link, you get 15. I don't have it on me, but I can post it somewhere later. And then you can just ask, you give the brief to your vibe coding tool, whether it's Lovable, Bolt, God, what are the other ones? Replete. You can give it the brief and it's going to go ahead and build up your prototype. Sometimes it will work first time. If what you're trying to build is very basic, it can generally one-shot it. If it can't, you might need to go back and forward with it a little bit, but it's basically like using ChatGPT. If you haven't used a vibe coding tool yet, it's pretty similar. You use natural language to talk to it. There are things you need to be careful of. Vibe coding tools can get into loops, for example, so you need to learn how to manage those kind of bug loops and asking it to step back. Maybe you take the problem out to Claude or out to another AI and then bring it back into Lovable. But generally, if your project is simple enough, Lovable will be able to just create it in one shot. There are other issues to do with, the security is not high enough, etc., etc. Things that people use to criticize vibe coding, valid, but not in this case, because we are building a prototype. We're building something very basic, which is not going to be taking credit card information. We probably won't even have a user sign-up flow. We're just creating something that allows us to test whether the idea works or not, whether there is any merit to what we're building, and we can share it privately with some beta testers that we trust. So that's how I do it exactly. So I'd start in Claude, work out the project brief, move it over to Lovable, get the prototype done, share it with a couple of beta testers who I trust. No need to deploy it publicly because we are only prototyping it. So that would be my process. Did you read about Sam Altman's statement that they'd be addressing memory for GPT-6? Major pivot, yeah. So GPT-6 is already on its way. I quite like GPT-5, but their launch has been an absolute shambles, and they have admitted that. They've said, yeah, we dropped the ball. I think he said, we screwed up, was what Sam Altman, I can quote him, he said, we screwed up. So I think they are trying to move people away from that as quickly as possible, and the easiest way for them to do so is to talk about GPT-6 and to start the next hype cycle. He's also said the time gap between GPT-5 and 6 is going to be less than between 4 and 5. When did GPT-4 come out? GPT-4 came out in March 2023, and we are 2025, so that's, 2.5 years between GPT-4 and GPT-5. So he said it's going to be less than that. So we'll see. I think focusing on the memory is a really good idea. One of the killer features of the current ChatGPT is its persistent memory. The fact that it remembers things about you. Gemini just added it last week. They're behind the curve, and Claude have added a form of it, but you need to specifically say, go back and get that memory for me. So it's a stunted version because it requires you to remember for the AI and then tell it to go and get it. So I don't think that's a very good implementation of it. I'm sure they will add something in the future because giving it a persistent memory makes the AI and use of the AI super sticky. It makes you want to continue to use that particular AI. So I used to use Claude for absolutely everything. I'm using ChatGPT more and more now because of this persistent memory and the fact that it knows my preferences. I think focusing on that for GPT-6 is a good idea, and increasing the context window so it can learn more and we can give it more information is a no-brainer as well. This happens with every model. The context window will continue to go up. The reason I think this is a clever move is because the launch of GPT-5 showed that people care about the personality. It was less about the intelligence and more about how people felt about interacting with that GPT. So some people thought GPT-4 was too agreeable. Some people enjoyed 4.0's softness, the agreeableness, basically, the ability to have a conversation like a human with 4.0. And there's a big divide between those people. With increased memory, that means increased personalization, because the more it knows about you, the more it's able to adapt to how you like to converse with your AI. And I think that's going to be really important, especially on the consumer level moving forward. And it's not just going to be about the raw intelligence of the model. Increasingly, it's going to be how do we feel when we use a particular model. And I think the GPT-5 launch has taught OpenAI that this is now an emotive thing. This is not just about intelligence. This is about emotion and how we feel, and our emotions about the user experience, the user interface, etc., are becoming more important than the raw output, than the raw intelligence. So I think it's a smart move. Question is whether they're going to hire psychologists and therapists and people who think about this kind of stuff, or if they're just going to try and engineer it as engineers do. But we'll see over the next couple of years before GPT-6. I think he's also smart trying to change the news cycle to GPT-6. I don't think it worked, but I can see what he's trying to do. He's also talking about building trillions of dollars of data centers. So again, trying to change the narrative, push us away from GPT-5 and complaining, and towards the future of whatever GPT-6 is and whatever these new data centers are going to be used for, presumably GPT-6. Al-Katab says, what is the best way to get into AI? What's a good pathway? Depends what you want to do. If you're talking about just using AI on a general daily basis, then just start using it. Grab ChatGPT on your phone and begin to use it. Like, it becomes a Google replacement first. That's a perfectly fine use, but then from there, you'll get into more sophisticated uses. If you are talking about the deeper level of getting into building with artificial intelligence, or even deeper than that, building artificial intelligence, then there are different pathways. So if you want to build AIs at the base level, that foundational level, you need to learn machine learning. You're going to need to know the mathematics. There are still courses of study which can allow you to get into that world. There was a guy from Google the other day. He's one of the co-founders of the AI lab. I forget his name, but he was saying, don't bother. There's no point getting PhDs anymore. There won't be anything left to learn in AI by the time you get your PhD. It felt a bit like he was pulling up the ladder because he's there and he's like, I don't want anyone else here. But he might have a point in the sense that in the next couple of years, we will have AIs that can produce PhD level theses, basically. But that doesn't stop you from learning machine learning. It doesn't stop you from beginning to experiment and build. So I'd learn Python, I'd learn the mathematics behind it, I'd learn some machine learning, and then you can start to deploy using various different packages. You can deploy your own models. One thing I would say is that increasingly it's difficult to do, not impossible, but difficult to do yourself because the levels of compute required are scaling up and up and up. So for us to build a frontier model now is basically impossible. You can't do it as an individual because you need hundreds of millions of dollars for the training. So we, as kind of hobbyists or people who are learning, we can deploy something like GPT-2 or GPT-3 ourselves, but beyond that, it starts to get too complex. So you can do that, sorry, not too complex, too expensive, really expensive, but you can still do it as a learning exercise. If you want a pathway into that, I would check out Andrej Karpathy's videos over on YouTube. Fantastic. They are not short. They're all about 3 hours long, but he's a very good communicator of how large language models and generative AI work. So that's a really good starting point. And then there are courses on deeplearning.ai. They're all free. You can audit the courses on Coursera. And again, they're fantastic. There's a pathway for you to follow there. I don't necessarily recommend going to university to learn this stuff because the pace at which it's moving is going to make it really hard for a university to keep up to date, because universities still use textbooks, and textbooks take a long time to write. So if you're still reading a textbook about machine learning that was written before the advent of ChatGPT, there begins to be a disconnect. So I would just start by building and creating. So Andrej Karpathy's YouTube videos to start, and deeplearning.ai, and 3 Blue, I always get this wrong, 3 Blue 1 Brown. Yep, 3 Blue 1 Brown is also a very good explainer of the mathematics behind artificial intelligence. And then there's a few people you can follow, people like Nate B. Jones, fantastic. He's mainly on TikTok. Ethan Mollick, who is on LinkedIn and Twitter, and they are really good for keeping you up to date with what's going on. So, okay, High Fruit and Monica are discussing building a prototype. Using vibe coding, yeah, you're not going to get a high quality prototype. You don't really need it. So the reason we prototype is just as proof of concept. As High Fruit is saying, it's about an MVP, a minimum viability product. It's something where you can show to a potential customer and they will get it or they won't get it. And it's not necessarily about polish. It's not about the bells and whistles. It's about proving the core concept and the core value that this piece of software is going to produce. Vibe coding will get you there. From there, You are either going to hire an engineer to take it to the next level for actual production deployment. That costs money, obviously. So you can also use your prototype to help raise financing. That's a totally different route, obviously, but you can raise cash based on a prototype and then hire engineers, etc. Or you find a technical co-founder who will be able to take it to the next level. They'll probably look at your AI mock-up, tell you it's terrible, and then rebuild it themselves. Absolutely fine. The point is we use the prototype to get to the point where we can convince people to even take us seriously. So whether it's people who are going to finance us and give us cash, or whether it's technical co-leads, we use the MVP to prove there is some value here and maybe even get a little bit of market demand up and running. And then we can leverage that into full deployment. If you wanted to work on the deployment yourself, the basic pathway, this is one that I use. I will prototype in Lovable for my vibe coded part, and it's fine. I will hook that Lovable project to a GitHub repo, and then I will pull the GitHub repo into Cursor, and then I can continue to work on that project in Cursor. Generally, I'll also migrate it over to Vercel as well from Lovable, but that's getting a bit more complex. But what that allows you to do is to have a central repo, and you can still work in it in Lovable, to be honest. So I often do front-end stuff. So the interface, for example, I'll do in Lovable, but then anything more complicated, like tooling in the background, I'll do in Cursor. But it's all pushing and pulling into this same repo in the middle. So that's my personal setup. Is it the best? No, probably not. There are people who are much smarter and much better at these things, but that works for me. Lovable, GitHub, and Cursor. And this is the central repo that these are connected to. Yeah, High Fruit saying, my biz is the business peeps go and build the final working prototype. This is what's exciting about vibe coding, I think. It's less exciting for people who can code. Yes, it speeds them up. Great, fantastic. It can also make spaghetti out of your code base, but used properly, it can speed them up. What's really exciting about vibe coding, though, is for the entrepreneurs, the people who have ideas, who have for years, they've had to find a technical co-founder. So this was always, whenever I went to meetups or events, it was always ideas people. People were like, I've got this great idea, I just need someone to code it for me. There's always a huge discrepancy between them. There are the people with ideas, which is a lot of people, and then the people who can actually build those ideas, which was a very small number of people. And that's why coders can charge a lot of money, because it's a very niche skill set. With vibe coding, the ideas people can now build a very basic prototype. And I think that's really healthy. Not because they're necessarily going to be able to deploy it and make money from it. Some of them do, but that's not the healthy part. The healthy part is some of them realize that, oh, actually, my idea is rubbish. Because when you concretize it, when you get it out of your head and actually build it into a working prototype, that forces you to be precise. It forces precision. And instead of it just being I want to make a cool app that allows you to do such and such, it's like, okay, these are the steps, these are the interfaces, this is how it's going to flow. You have to get to a level of clarity, which when you are just the idea person, you never get to. So I think it's a really healthy tool for people to start to build themselves, realize, okay, actually, maybe my idea wasn't all that, and then go from there and learn how to make it better. I'm going to hop over to, because I've been blabbing. Oh my God, I've been really blabbing. You guys need to stop me when I'm blabbing. My editor's going to kill me. So Mark Zuckerberg shakes up Meta's AI efforts again. So he's been on a hiring spree recently with these $100 million signing bonuses, like eye-watering amounts of money. There's one guy who was offered a $125 million compensation package over 4 years. And the guy was like, no, I don't think so. I'm working on my own startup. I'll pass. And Zuckerberg rang him personally and was like, okay, $250 million. $250 million for one dude. And he's 24 years old. Yeah, so Zuck has been on a spending spree, spending a lot of money, with presumably the goal being to sprint to AGI and ASI, because whoever gets there, the theory is it's a winner takes all. You can make an awful lot of money by getting there. Yeah, so even spending $250 million, securing one 24-year-old is apparently worth it in that calculus. But we're now seeing some pullback, and this is only a month or so after the spending spree. So Meta have internally announced a new restructuring of its AI division amid internal tensions over the technology, people with knowledge of the matter say. So on Tuesday, Meta announced internally that it is splitting its AI division, which is known as Meta Superintelligence Lab, into 4 groups. 2 people with knowledge of the situation said. One group will focus on AI research, one on a potentially powerful AI called superintelligence, another on products, advertising, and one on infrastructure such as data center and other AI hardware. Okay, that sounds fine. The reorganization is likely to be the final one for some time. The people said the moves are aimed at better organizing Meta so it can get to its goal of superintelligence and develop AI products more quickly to compete with others. Some AI executives are expected to leave, the people said. Meta is also looking at downsizing the AI division overall, which could include eliminating roles or moving employees to other parts of the company because it has grown to thousands of people in recent years, the people have said. Discussions remain fluid and no final decisions have been made on the downsizing. So yeah, it is cutting back after spending practically, honestly, obscene amounts of money in the last few months. It's a strange move to immediately retrench and be like, ooh, we've got too many people. The argument could be made that they've spent a lot of money on very kind of high-end engineers, 10x, 100x, and they're getting rid of the craft. Sorry, that's a terrible way to speak about people, but this is probably how they're talking about them in the boardroom. So that might be what they're doing. But it's a strange signal to the market. And we just talked about how there are some AI stocks are slumping, and it's stuff like this which causes a decrease in confidence because we don't know why they're doing it. And this is an internal leak. So the assumption will be Meta have overspent and they've realized, and now they need to cut back, which erodes confidence. In what would be a shift for Meta only using its own technology to power its AI products, the company is also actively exploring using third-party AI models to do, the people said. That could include building on other open source AI models, which are freely available, or licensing closed source models from other companies. Okay, very interesting. So yeah, there's big moves going on in Meta. Meta want to sprint to superintelligence. The fact that they are no longer talking about AGI, artificial general intelligence, is telling. So there's a spectrum. Right now we are at ANI, artificial narrow intelligence, which is AIs made for a specific reason. A self-driving car is an ANI because it's very good at self-driving car. It cannot play checkers, it cannot play chess, it cannot play Go. A computer like AlphaGo that's really good at playing Go cannot drive a self-driving car, for example. So these are ANIs. The idea with an AGI, which is the theoretical next step, is an AI that can adapt itself to any task, basically any human task, and complete it with the same level of competency as a human. We are nudging up against that, but the development of AI, it has a jagged frontier. So it's very good at some things, not very good at other things. So that's why it's hard to pin down when and where we will hit AGI, because do we need to be good at all the same things at the same time? And also, how do we define human intelligence? It's all very messy. And I think that we won't know we've hit AGI, if we hit AGI, until several years afterwards. We'll be able to pinpoint it then and be like, oh, I think we did it then. But until then, it's just going to look like general progress. We're just going to have new models, going to have new capabilities. We'll continue to push forward, but we won't necessarily have a moment where it's, oh, we've done it. Anyway, so Zuckerberg is ignoring AGI and he's aiming for ASI, artificial superintelligence. That's the much more theoretical, much more sci-fi concept of an AI that has intelligence surpassing a human, or even surpassing all of humanity, so the combined intelligence of the whole human race. So it would, by definition, be something that we can't really understand. It would be an alien intelligence that is smarter than us. So in the same way that a chicken looks at a human being, and the chicken cannot understand what on earth we are doing, we would be looking up to the ASI, and we would not be able to comprehend their actions, wouldn't be able to comprehend how they're doing things, why they're doing things, in exactly the same way as a chicken cannot do so with humans. That's what Zuckerberg is aiming for. I think he's not aiming for AGI. Oh, sorry, this is marketing. He's not talking about going for AGI because he probably knows Sam Altman and OpenAI or Google will probably get there first. So I think he's downplaying the importance of AGI because they're behind. Basically, their llama models are not good enough. He's downplaying that because he knows that's going to be hit in the next couple of years, probably, maybe. This is all speculation. So instead he's saying, we don't care about that. We're going for ASI. We're going for the big goal at the end. I'm not sure if I trust Meta to be the people who shepherd us into that particular section of human history. They have behaved poorly with their AI division over the last few weeks. Last week we had a leak of their AI ethics policy, which included the ability to have the chatbot could have romantic and sensual relationships with children as long as they were over the age of 13. If they were 13 and below, no, we can't do that, but 14, fine. So yeah, I don't know if they're the ones to shepherd us forward into ASI, nor do I think they have the capability to do. The front runners right now are really OpenAI and probably Google, because Google can turn their resources towards this, and they have a huge amount of resources in the same way that Meta do, but they have a better grip and handle on the artificial intelligence technologies, whereas Zuckerberg is primarily building them so he can sell more advertising via his social media platforms, and AI is really good at doing that. It's just not necessarily the high concept of the future of AI. It's selling adverts. Come on. So we'll see. Maybe they're in trouble. Maybe it is just a shake-up, but I'm sure we'll see a statement, because right now it's just a leak. Cool. I'm going to hop over to some nice news about AI, because it happens sometimes. Most of the kind of coverage is doom and gloom. This article in particular, it's on the BBC this morning. No, sorry, yesterday. I'm sure it's still there. Is interesting because it's the first headline I've seen which doesn't really mention AI. So the headline is MND left her without a voice. 8 seconds of scratchy audio gave it back to her. That's the headline. So AI is not mentioned. But I saw that headline and I was like, 8 seconds of audio gave a woman back her voice. I bet that's AI related. I bet that they've hidden the lead, but that's AI related, I'm sure. So after such a long time, I couldn't really remember my voice. Sarah Ezekiel tells BBC Access All. When I first heard it again, I felt like crying. It's a kind of miracle. The onset of motor neuron disease, MND, left Sarah without a voice and use for hands at the age of 34. It was within months of her becoming a mum for the second time. As they were growing up, her children, Aviva and Eric, only ever heard her speak through a machine with an emotionless robotic voice. But 25 years on, artificial intelligence, has recreated their mum's real voice from just 8 seconds of audio on a scratchy VHS tape. So she speaks with an eye gaze technology. She can look at the letters and type, I think, which uses the camera to track her eyes as she looks at letters on a screen in front of her, and then the sound of her younger voice rings out. So they've used 8 seconds of voice to replace her robotic voice that she can guide using her eyes with her real voice, which is a really cool use of artificial intelligence. And the fact that they were able to do that with just 8 seconds, because remember, we didn't always record everything we did. Like I have an hour of me every single day talking to camera. Like there must be hundreds of hours of me yapping. So I'll be fine for voice samples. But previously, this lady, she had 8 seconds on a VHS tape. That has been encoded and then used to build a voice model, which is close enough to bring tears to our eyes. So it's a wonderful use of AI. And people forget we can do great things with generative AI, because a lot of people fret too much. I'm wondering, sometimes on the BBC at the end they always cut it off and they say, but remember, this is destroying the planet. No, they didn't do it. Okay, they've been good. Often at the bottom they'll say, they'll throw in a little barb like AI uses X% of the world's electricity and it's going to kill us all. They'll just throw in a sentence at the end. Oh god, okay. But not in this case. They've been good. And another piece of good news is Bill Gates launches a $1 million AI competition to tackle Alzheimer's. Unveiled today, the Alzheimer's Disease Data Initiative, ADDI. The competition will award a $1 million prize to a team who successfully utilizes agentic AI to develop innovative solutions. The resulting tools will be made publicly available through the online research environment. So basically, specific funding for AI projects to help with Alzheimer's. And we're going to see a lot of this stuff. It just doesn't really get much traction in the news, unfortunately, but a lot of research. We had research last week about AI being used to synthesize, I think it's 36 million different, it's either protein or chemical formulations, which has helped to work out a potential fix for MRSA, like the superbug, the resistant superbug that we haven't been able to destroy. Generative AI specifically came up with 36 million different chemical compounds, and then helped to work out which of those should be tested. And now we have a potential fix for MRSA, and it's Obviously, it's a little way off human trials, etc., but we're going to move forward with that. So there's a lot we can do with generative AI that when it's deployed, you see all of the naysayers, all of the people who don't like AI, you'll see them at the bottom in the comments being like, well, this is how we should use AI. This is a good use of AI. I fully agree, but we have to remember it's the same technology. So as we push forward the technology with OpenAI, with ChatGPT, that's going to help our research as well. So all of this money being funneled into generative AI helps this good stuff. It's not separated, it's the same technology, and we have to remember that. And there's good uses and there's bad uses. This general purpose technology and what we choose to do with it is up to us. I'm hoping we can encourage more people to do more good things with it, and that requires people pulling their head out of the sand and getting used to this technology, rather than all the good people saying, well, I'm not going to use it. That's dangerous. We don't want the baddies using it to generate deep fakes and pornography. We can use it for this as well. Anyway, rant over. Andy says, I regard AI being where we were with transport when the penny farthing was invented. 100%. Andy, I was just saying this about 30 minutes ago. We are in like the floppy disk era. We're in the dial-up modem era. We will look back in 20 years at what we're doing now and think it's really quaint, and think that we were delightful to get so excited about these very basic models. In the same way that you show a kid now a floppy disk and they're like, what is that? You explain to them, yeah, we had to install games off like 20 of these. What are you talking about? I think we're in that phase right now where it's a toy, and there are a few people who are watching this stream, people who are watching this on social media. You are in a small percentage of people who are tinkering around with this. In the same way that back in the early days of computers, there would be people tinkering, messing around, learning the limitations of it, who were really emotionally invested in things like GPT-5 in a way that the general public is not. They do not care. We are still very early, and it is the penny farthing, it is the floppy disk, it's the basic first iterations of this technology that later on, in 20 years, we're going to have versions of this in a museum, and we're going to think, oh, bless them, look at them with their terrible AI. So I wanted to come to the end of the live, but I want to flag it up because it's probably better you go and read it anyway. Mustafa Suleyman, who is, what is he? He's the CEO. Pull up this. So Microsoft boss. Let me get his exact thing. He is just the CEO, right? I should know this. British entrepreneur, CEO of Microsoft AI specifically. Okay, cool. That's what I needed. He has written a think piece. He's also written a great book, which you should pick up as well. His think piece is called We Must Build AI for People, Not to Be a Person. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a reaction to the GPT-5 debacle over the last couple of weeks, and the fact that a lot of people saw GPT 4.0 as a person, and a lot of people have anthropomorphized it and actually given it names. And then when it was removed and replaced with GPT-5, there was a lot of upset, a lot of distress caused by that move. And Suleyman is saying we must build AI for people, not to be a person. And he's coined a term called seemingly conscious AI, SCAI. Not the best term, but I see what he's getting at. So it's something that we as humans, we believe in their consciousness, which is, if we haven't passed the Turing test by now, I'm pretty sure the behavior last week with 4.0 has shown that we've well and truly trounced the Turing test. I'm just going to read his summary because it's quite a long article, but go and look it up. It's on mustafasuleyman.ai, and it's doing the rounds. Lots of people are reading this right now, but I'll read the summary for now. AI progress has been phenomenal. A few weeks ago, talk of conscious AI would have seemed crazy. Today, it feels increasingly urgent. In this essay, I want to discuss what I'll call seemingly conscious AI, SCAI, SCAI, one that has all the hallmarks of other conscious beings and thus appears to be conscious. It shares certain aspects of the idea of philosophical zombie, one that simulates all the characteristics of consciousness, but internally it is blank. This is a big question, like how can we tell that other people are conscious? We only have kind of their inputs and outputs to go by. We don't really know what's going on inside someone else's head. And it's really hard to define human consciousness. We've been having this discussion, philosophers, psychologists, scientists, for millennia now, and we haven't really pinned it down. So to ascribe it to an artificial intelligence is, again, it's fiddly, difficult. My imagined AI system would not actually be conscious, this is Suleyman again, but it would imitate consciousness in such a convincing way that it would be indistinguishable from a claim that you and I might make to one another about our own consciousness. So this is a tweak of the Turing test, the imitation game. He's used the word indistinguishable. This is really important. So in the original imitation game, later called the Turing test, Turing was not interested in whether or not, or what was inside the black box, basically. He did not care because he knew that was less important than the function. The fact that if you could not tell whether you were talking to a computer or not, if it was indistinguishable from interacting with a human, that was sufficient to pass the imitation game. Because he knew that trying to pin down concepts of human intelligence and what is human intelligence, he knew that was difficult. So trying to, again, ascribe it to a computer was going to be impossible. It was not a problem that he wanted to solve. So instead he talked about, okay, we focus on indistinguishability. If a human cannot tell, then it has passed the test. It did not matter whether or not the computer in the middle was intelligent or not, because that is a very hard to solve problem because we don't have a good definition. So it looks like Suleyman is going the same way. It would imitate consciousness in such a convincing way that it would be indistinguishable from a claim that you and I may make to one another about our own consciousness. This is not far away. Such a system can be built with technologies that exist today, along with some that will mature over the next 2 to 3 years. No expensive bespoke pre-training is required. Everything can be done with large model API access, natural language prompting, basic tool use, and regular code. The arrival of seemingly conscious AI is inevitable and unwelcome. Instead, we need a vision for AI that can fulfill its potential as a helpful companion without falling prey to its illusions. So he's talking here about AI psychosis, which is a new and scary term, a very 2025 term. To some, this discussion will feel ungrounded, more science fiction than reality. Tell me about it. To others, it may feel unnecessarily alarmist. Such emotional reactions are the tip of the iceberg given what lies ahead. It's highly likely that some people will argue that these AIs are not only conscious, but that as a result they may suffer and therefore deserve our moral consideration. Ooh. To be clear, there is zero evidence of this today, and some argue there are strong reasons to believe that it will not be the case in the future. Yet the consequences of many people starting to believe an SCAI, seemingly conscious AI, is actually conscious deserve our immediate attention. We have to be extremely cautious here and encourage real public debate and begin to set clear norms and standards. This is about how we build the right kind of AI, not AI consciousness. Clearly establishing this difference isn't an argument about semantics, it's about safety. Personality without personhood. Ooh, I love that. And this work must start now. So I highly recommend you go and find this article. If you Google seemingly conscious AI is coming, then it will pop up for you. Of course, it got some media coverage, but instead of a nuanced discussion of what he's talking about, instead the BBC headline is Microsoft boss troubled by rise in reports of AI psychosis. So they jumped straight to the scary bit, which is AI psychosis, which is seemingly a very real phenomenon and something that we need to tackle, but it's part of a larger, broader discussion of how we interface and interact with AI in the future. And AI psychosis is the sensational. It's the tip of the iceberg here. It's what's going to grab the headlines, but it's the relative minority compared to the interactions of humans with AI in general. Most of us can use it without falling into AI psychosis. I'm pretty sure of that. But there are still impacts of using AI, especially when we start to become attached, without us having to lose touch with reality. So go and have a look at the paper. I'm not going to read out the whole thing because it goes on for a long time, but it's very easy to read. He's got a great writing style, and definitely check out his book. It's called The Coming Wave. It came out a couple of years ago, but it's very prescient, and everything that he's saying in it is happening, so he knows what he's talking about. I'm going to pop over to some final questions and then finish up. Can I ask you a question? Since the introduction of GPT-5, it seems like my projects have no memory. When I create a new project, it doesn't know anything about me. So projects in ChatGPT use a separate memory, but I think you can toggle it to use your... I think you can toggle them to use your main memory. 1 second. Let me check this for you. Project. More. So I don't use projects in ChatGPT. I use them in I use them in Claude, so I'm not familiar with this, unfortunately. So I think, what's the best way to find this out? I think that the memories are self-contained in projects in ChatGPT. The problem is we can't ask ChatGPT because it doesn't have meta-knowledge of itself. So the question is whether the persistent memory works in projects. I think, okay, no, apparently it is. So it should be applied across your projects as well. Make sure you've got persistent memory turned on, because I know it can be toggled off. I see no reason why that would have happened by mistake when ChatGPT came out, but maybe that's happened. I would check there. But that does sound very strange. That sounds like a bug to me. So check the persistent memory is still toggled on and see if that makes any difference, and maybe try making a new project and seeing if it's still the case. But sorry, I don't use projects in ChatGPT, so I'm not sure of the answer of that one, I'm afraid. Good morning, Emin. Who is leading in the AI race, Larissa? That is a big question. Uptake-wise, ChatGPT, OpenAI. So Sam Altman is leading the charge. It's a very crude way to check, but you can look on Google Trends and you can put in the names of the large models and you can see the relative search volume. So how many people are looking at these things. It's crude, but it gives you an idea of the impact of a particular model or a particular company within, like, globally across the world. And ChatGPT just dominates. Like, it's indexed and ChatGPT is at like 80, 90, and all of the other models are basically a flat bar at the bottom. People have not heard of them. It's the same when you go outside of our kind of AI bubble and you talk to people, do not know what Claude is. They do not know what Grok is. They do not know what any of these models are. They might know Microsoft Copilot because they hate it, because they're forced to use it at work. But for the most part, ChatGPT is synonymous with AI, which is wrong. It's not AI. ChatGPT is technically a chatbot built upon a large language model, etc. Like, it's part of AI, but it's just become synonymous with artificial intelligence, for better or worse. So in terms of public perception and the brand of AI, it's OpenAI and ChatGPT are leading the race. Whether or not they'll be able to sustain, we don't know. They are compared to some of the other players, like Google and Microsoft. They are a new company, a very new company in terms of lifespan. They are not profitable. They are starting to make money, but whether or not they'll be able to make enough profit to sustain long term, we don't know yet. They are spending a lot of money and they are raising a lot of money and then immediately spending it all. But that's usual. That's very normal in a Silicon Valley based startup. You just don't really make much money initially. You need to make some money so you can prove that there is a business model there. But I think Amazon lost money for 12 years or more, I think. Let me check that out. I think it was 12 years. It's just part of the model. You spend, 9 years. The first profit was after 9 years, and it was a profit of 1 cent per share. So they kept their profits down aggressively because you can use all your funds to grow into the market space, to dominate the market, which is what ChatGPT are doing, and to outspend any competitors and basically stop them from ever being able to compete. And then you flip your model and you start to make a profit later down the line. They'll do that by adding adverts, very likely. And they're going to start to put adverts in. I think they'll wait. Whoever pulls the trigger first on that is going to be in a world of hurt. So Google, one of the reasons why Google was able to take over from Yahoo was because Google were a lot more fair in their advertising practices. Yahoo allowed adverts to be put into their search listings without telling people. So they eroded their trust. People would be clicking on the top link thinking it was the best organic result. It was not. It was a paid for link. So Yahoo basically killed themselves, and Google came in with transparency and ate their lunch. So I think similarly, whoever adds adverts into their AI first is going to be in a world of hurt, but it is the most obvious pathway to high revenues as well, subscriptions and advertising. So in terms of brand, ChatGPT. In terms of whether they'll be around in the next year, OpenAI, that is, hard to tell. I would say Google is probably in a strong position, but they need to play their hand really well because 70+% of their revenue currently comes from search advertising, and that's at risk because people are moving from Google search to generative AI. And obviously Google are using AI overviews, they're trying to pivot to it. They have the deep pockets and the research labs and the talent to become an AI first company. The question is whether they can turn the huge ship that is Google around, which is basically an advertising ship. Can they turn it into generative AI? If they can, they will probably win, but it's a big if. And then Microsoft, I don't know what they're doing. The promise is there. So Copilot 365 in particular, the idea that you can have a fully connected organization, great idea. The implementation's terrible. Grok and Elon Musk and XAI, I think what they've done is really interesting, because in just 2 years, they've gone from nothing to having a frontier level model. It's not better than the other models, but it's up there with them. So they've done a really good job by just spending a huge amount of money. I don't think anyone will take them seriously enough for them to become a general use AI. I think that Elon Musk's attachment to it, great for them because he bankrolled it and he built the Colossus data center, but also terrible for them because it's not going to be used in business. It's not going to be used seriously. And then Anthropic, I would love for Anthropic to win. I love Claude. I think they move quite slowly because they want to make sure that everything is safe, which I commend. I think that's fantastic. But it means that they move slower. So things like persistent memory, for example, which ChatGPT has had for 6 months, roughly. Claude has just added the ability to reference old chats. It's not persistent memory, it's a dumbed down version. And they're doing it for safety reasons. They don't want to collect too much data, etc., etc., etc. But that makes it less useful as a model. So instead of giving us the option to opt in to persistent memory, they just haven't given it to us. So ChatGPT is just better for that reason. And Claude people don't know what it is. They recently did some billboards in Times Square. And there was a guy, I saw an influencer went around and he was asking people like, what's that? Do you know what Claude is? Do you know what Anthropic is? And everyone was like, no idea. So they've got the billboards up. Maybe they'll get some brand recognition, but it's an uphill struggle for them to compete with OpenAI. So that was a very long answer to who's leading in the AI race. It is OpenAI, but I think Google may have the staying power to outlast them. Maybe. It's all in flux, as you can see. Oh yeah, and China. Sorry, I totally forgot about China. We also have DeepSeek. So China is going down a different route. They're open sourcing all of their models, which I think is very smart. I've done a whole video on why that is, but basically it's soft power. They're bankrolled in part by the government as well. So they have a bit of a safety net, so they can push out these models for basically the non-American users. So it's becoming a default in other countries because R1 is very good. We're still waiting for R2 from DeepSeek. And their labs are very advanced. They're doing really good things. They have a chip shortage at the moment. Everyone has a chip shortage, but there's this whole trade war and the H200s not being allowed to be sold to mainland China. The H20s are now allowed, but only if Nvidia pays Trump 15% of their revenue, which is basically a bribe, basically a racket. So China need to update their chip production, the Huawei chips. Apparently, because their Huawei chips are not good enough, that is one of the reasons why the R2 model from DeepSeek is behind. That is speculation though. But I think China is a real player as well in the open source market in particular. So people building on top of their platforms, because that is a market that has been pretty much abandoned. Meta have said we're out of it. So they haven't said it officially, but they've said we're probably not going to open source our models moving forward. And they were the big ones. So now we really just have ChatGPT OSS, which, I mean, it's great to see that OpenAI moving into open source, but I don't know if that's going to be a large part of their plan moving forward. I could talk about AI constantly. I was on a podcast yesterday, and at the beginning, they were like, should we run through some questions? Should we, to make sure that you know what you're talking about and you have talking points? And I was like, yeah, don't worry. I could talk for hours about this stuff. I'm a good yapper. I wouldn't shut up on their podcast. Terrible. So if you enjoy hearing me yap about artificial intelligence, which you probably do because you're here, the videos go on YouTube every single day. We are now filming in beautiful 4K, 60 frames per second. So you can see every blemish. You can see my weird, I think I got punched in the face the other day. I do boxing. It's a bit raised here. You can see everything. It's all going to be on YouTube. We put the videos up a day later. So anything that was covered in today's live will be up on YouTube tomorrow. It allows you to navigate to a specific section to find an answer to a particular question or just look at what you're interested in. There's also a written newsletter, which is free. You can find that in the link in the bio, either below this video or up above in my profile. And that gives you a written summary of everything that's been covered. So it's a lot easier. You don't have to listen to me yap again for 1 hour. You can just read the summary and then find the link to the video itself. Check out both those things. YouTube, make sure to subscribe, and on the newsletter as well. I am also, what day is it today? Yeah, Thursday. I'm giving a webinar tonight at 6 p.m. London time. I think I've got about 100 people RSVP'd at the moment. Totally free webinar talking about how you can, as somebody who is interested in AI, as somebody who is following what is going on, you can use that plus your existing industry knowledge to go and give workshops to businesses. So I personally go and do this and I get paid. So my base rate now is £1,500 per hour to go and give a workshop. The most I've been paid is $4,000 per hour. So it's at £3,000 something for 1 hour of work. So it's good money. And I'll talk about why that is and how you can start to get into that as well. So that webinar is at 6 p.m. tonight, London time. There is a link in my bio, which will take you to the page and you can RSVP. If you can't make it, if you still RSVP, a recording will be sent out afterwards. As long as you're RSVP'd, that's the only way to get the recording. Awesome. Cool. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow. And make sure to read the Mustafa Suleyman article. That is your homework for today. No, I'm joking. No, you have to read it. And I will see you tomorrow again for another live. Thanks so much.